show. You could find us across all your favorite podcast platforms. You could find us on YouTube. Please remember to subscribe. And you could find us at realmeneatplants.com. My guest today is my good friend Mark Stosberg. Mark has become an athlete in something approaching middle age. Mark, how old are you?
48 today.
48. So you're beginning to get close to beginning to approach vegan middle age.
Yeah, it's halfway dead.
Okay, that's a nice way of phrasing it. And tell us about your journey to A, veganism, and B, becoming an endurance athlete.
Yeah. So I took the very slow road. Um, in college, I had a California vegetarian girlfriend, and she convinced me to be vegetarian. But at the time, there were two things happening at college. One was it was the meat they were serving was just industrial meat, right? And then also by mandate, they were required to have a vegetarian option at every meal. Now, I
Oh,
had grown
really?
up, what's that?
Really? A
Yeah, this is
vegetarian mandate?
Richmond, Indiana in the 90s. I believe they were required to have a vegan option as well.
Wow.
Um, yeah, I think they're also required to have potatoes at every meal too, which was, we ate every different kind of potatoes there. But
Wow.
uh, I'd grown up.
Who ran this school? Dr. John McDougall?
Oh, I don't know. To me, it was just like everything was new at college. So I was like, okay, why not? Like,
I didn't think there were any vegetarian or vegan mandates in the 90s, but okay, go ahead.
yeah. So I'd grown up on a farm in Kentucky, like a log cabin in the woods,
Wow.
the deer hunting on the farm, chickens running around the yard, the whole Kentucky farm experience. So it was a leap for me. Uh, but so yeah, that was the beginning of it. The relationship didn't last, but I stayed vegetarian, and then it's been like 28 years since then, and it just I went low dairy after a while, um, and eventually it was only in the last like 5 years or so I went cut it all out. I had that story intertwines with the running story because I had started um, listening to the Rich Roll podcast, and that was one of my influences, I think, on both journeys. But I'll fast forward to a point in my late 20s where it was the low point. I had uh, extremely bad sciatica. That's when you have pain that starts in your back and runs down your leg. And it was so bad that I had to take off work. I was just the only position that was comfortable was lying flat on my back. So I
Then
just
you
laid
had to
on
look
my
for a
back.
job where you could do it lying flat on your back, and that limits your possibilities.
Right, yeah, I do computer work.
Yeah.
So the first week was just miserable. The second week, we were in the middle of a big project and I needed to go back to work. And so I rigged up a situation where I could work lying flat on my back, where I would have the keyboard down on my lap where I couldn't see it, but I could type on it. And then I'd set my laptop on the floor next to me and would like turn my head 90 degrees to see a laptop screen. But then my neck would hurt. So then like later in the day, I would rotate it over to the other side.
This does
Uh,
not sound sustainable.
no, I felt too young to be old. Uh,
Yeah. And what were your doctors telling you? Were they recommending surgery?
I remember around that time I went to see a chiropractor and they took an x-ray, and when they bring it, they show it to you, you look like a skeleton, you're already dead,
Hmm.
and they're like, look, you've got these discs are compressing in your back. You need to sign up for 5 appointments right away, but basically you have some pain that you need to manage for the rest of your life. And this is deterioration and it's only gonna get worse from here. So can I book
Oh,
you for another 5 appointments and we'll just take it from there?
that's very depressing. You're in your late 20s and you're suffering this kind of pain.
Yeah. So yeah, so then to move forward from there, I fired the chiropractor. But also realized I had a real problem. I needed to do everything I could to get out of that situation. So I worked on creating a back that was lighter, more flexible, and stronger. And I used everything I knew at the time, which I used yoga, massage, stretching,
How
um,
do you create a back that's lighter?
lose weight. You lose weight.
Oh, okay.
I didn't
Were
have
you
much.
overweight at the
I
time?
was not particularly overweight at the time, but I was like, look, I got to bring everything to this game,
Yeah.
right? Um, One thing that helped me at that time was I learned that even though I couldn't stand up for more than a few minutes without pain, I could ride a recumbent bicycle, which I happened to own at the time. Not the stationary kind, but the kind that moves. So I hobbled out to the garage and I got on my bike and I rode 30 miles to Oxford, Ohio at the time, went to a bike shop. But when I got there and walked around, I had to sit down immediately or pretty quickly, like it just in the store because it hurt. But then once I was on the bike, I was okay, and I rode all the way back home, and just to get some exercise helped me feel more normal and to get back to it. Um, but yeah, I realized I think at that point I thought of the expression "put me out of my misery," and I was like, now I know what it's about because some nights I couldn't sleep.
Yeah.
Um, and so when I went back to work, I that might have been about the time I tried the what was somewhat new at the time, the standing desk that you can go up and down.
Right.
So uh, I realized to get my back stronger, it would help if I didn't have a chair holding me up all the time. So I tried standing, which I couldn't do, which was uncomfortable for all day. Um, I tried the yoga ball, and then
Right.
nothing was comfortable for a while. I had to rotate between the sitting with the heating pad, standing, the yoga ball, eventually. But yeah, it slowly got better. And then we'll just fast forward again. So things were like, okay, I made some changes. About 6 years later, I had sciatica came back again. And that was around the time where I was like, I gotta lean into this harder and figure this out.
Well,
And
let me
that's
go
when the
back a
running
bit.
started.
During those 6 years, it got a little bit better, or it completely had gone away into remission, or how much were you suffering during those 6 years in between?
It got to be pretty manageable, but it was sort of like, we'd go to a church and would say, "Oh, my husband can't help you move. He has a bad back." Right. So it was as if I had a permanent condition, uh, and I was better, but it was just never. I wasn't. Certain things just weren't going to be part of my life.
Right.
I was a guy with a bad back, and my mid 30s or something.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Okay.
so.
And then it came back with a
It
vengeance
came
again.
back, and so these trigger people who have sciatica know this. Like the first time it happened, I was juggling a neighborhood birthday party for a kid. I leaned over to throw a ball underneath my leg, and I just had this shooting pain. The second time it came back, I'd like leaned over in the street to clean a drain out, and then it like there was a spasm. So you just have these small triggers, and then you have these months-long recovery. Um, so yeah.
All right.
It
And
was
at this point, you're still eating the standard American diet?
well, I mean, I was eating
No, you had
vegetarian
become a
diet,
vegetarian.
yeah, but I thought I'm vegetarian, I'm done, right? Like that's
Yeah.
it. That's all. I'm good. So I wasn't really looking into diet. I thought I had solved it. Um,
You were still
and
eating eggs?
oh yeah, eggs and cheese. I might have been reducing some dairy by then, but I had at that time still believed a version of the protein myth
Right.
that I needed. That there was value and nutrition in the eggs and the
Right.
cheese and so forth. Um, so
So you're on a vegetarian diet, you're in pain again with sciatica, and so what do you do?
yeah, now I'm not gonna get the timeline exactly right, but I do remember um, that starting running, and we were on vacation where I was stuck in a house in Vermont, uh, and I ran down a mountain, and that was which was great. It was really great going down,
Well,
and then I had to
I
get.
have to interrupt you again here. You're
Yeah.
in pain from sciatica, and you think this has come back. What am I going to do about it? I know I'll start running.
Yeah,
Who
so I definitely
recommends
was doing some
running for
walking before I
sciatica?
was doing some running, right? But I think it was I just needed to move. Just at that point, I'm not sure I had the recumbent bike anymore, but just sweating, getting being active helped. Um, so I
Had running ever worked before for sciatica?
n no, I mean I wouldn't. I'm really the first. You definitely walk before you run, but I'm at that point the sciatica could have been reduced, but I just needed my screen just turned off. I
I
need to
see
make
you.
sure I needed to make sure it didn't come back. Right. Um,
So
so I
you decide you just have this crazy impulse that I'm in pain. I'm gonna run. I'm gonna try to outrun my pain.
yeah,
Yes.
I mean
Okay.
it was
And
just
no
more like I need
doctor
to get into shape,
recommended to
right? I
you,
need to be active. And
no
uh,
doctor had said to you, Mark, you've got terrible sciatica, start running, right?
no, that didn't make sense. But yeah,
Okay. So
I
you
did have this
decide to
experience where I
run.
ended up running longer than I intended because I had run down a mountain and then I had to go back up. Uh, and so that was the first time I'd run, I think, uh, eight 8 miles. I'd done some shorter runs before that.
You ran 8 miles with sciatica pain.
Uh, at this point, I'm in recovery from that, but just generally, I'm stiff. I don't feel great. Um, yeah, I think, yeah.
Okay. How long ago was this?
Oh, we're talking 10 or 12 years ago.
10 or 12
Uh,
years ago,
yeah.
you start running to help your sciatica.
Yeah, just sciatica, just generally to get in shape. And around that time, as I mentioned, I was listening to, I found the Rich Roll podcast, and he
Right.
was vegan, middle-aged, or he went vegan, right? He had this middle-age crisis himself,
Right.
and he got into veganism and endurance sports, and I
Right.
was like relating to that story.
Right.
Um, he
He
ran,
also had a drug issue. You
he
didn't
had an
you
alcohol
didn't
addiction.
follow him on that, did you?
No, but I did learn about addiction from listening to his podcast.
Okay.
Uh, but it was about this time where I'd only run 8 miles or so, and I read his book Finding Ultra, and he was doing these runs that were 30 miles or 50 miles, and I thought I'm gonna do one of those one day, but I had never even run like a half marathon. But I just I did stick with it, and I did try running 13 miles, and that was probably one of the worst runs of my life because I had not run track and cross country in high school. I did not have a coach or really know what I was doing, and everything went wrong on that run. I was not generally prepared. I had chafing and blisters and dehydration and lack of nutrition and general fatigue and it the wheels definitely fell off, and I still had a ways to get several more miles to get home.
Okay.
Um, but the way my brain works is after I recovered, I just started to work on like how to fix all the problems. Like, oh, I would get shoes and I would deal with the chafing and the blisters. And instead of thinking that was horrible, I should quit, I was like, I'm gonna go back and try again, but fix all the problems that I had with that. Um,
Okay. And what was your wife saying?
um, She was tolerable. I think I'm a less irritable person when I run. So
Oh,
she's a fan of me leaving the house and coming back a happier person.
okay.
Uh, yeah.
My
Um,
wife is a fan of me leaving the house and, coming back in a long time.
yeah. Yes. My same.
Yeah.
Yeah. I worked up to run longer and longer, and the day I said I want to run 50 miles, she said, "When will you be home?" That was the only question she had about my health and safety and well-being about an extremely long run was like, "How long will you be gone?"
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So uh, at this era, I have kids now, and the
Right.
kids want to do things too, and um, they want to know, like, can you carry this for me? Can we go on a backpacking trip or a bike trip or whatever? And I want to be able to have the health to do that. Um, One of the things I did that worked in terms of the sciatica part was I eventually just completely gave up sitting in chairs. I decided I'm not, I mean, like, I'll sit in a chair if I go out, but right now I'm sitting on a yoga ball,
Uh-huh.
and my 40-hour work week is now 100% on the ball. Um, and doesn't bother me. But when I was coming out of sciatica, I literally wasn't strong enough in terms of my back muscles to do that for the whole time. So I would rotate between different sitting options. And what I understand now is that because I move around a little bit on the ball and hold myself up, that I've strengthened um, my core back muscles. Um,
Oh.
and I honestly think that is a huge driver in what helped the sciatica in particular. And so I either stand at my desk because I do have the sit stand desk that I can raise and lower, or I sit on the ball. But now I run so much that when I'm at my desk, I'm usually just I sit on the ball. And I knew I had completely solved it when we I took the kids on a camping a big hike on the Knobstone Trail. It's like in Indiana, it's 42 miles. They call it the Little Appalachia Trail, and they were, I'm gonna say, 8 and 11. But I had to carry what I call the Papa Pack. I had to carry all my gear, but then I had to carry a certain amount of gear for the children because they couldn't carry all the weight to support themselves. And I was able to do that. And I was like,
Oh.
okay, I think I think my back is recovered now. Uh, and I wasn't sure I'd ever get to that place in my life.
So
Um,
so you were hiking with a heavy pack on your back for how long a distance?
well, 3 days. We actually planned a 4-day trip, and the kids are 8 and 11, and I think we planned 8 to 10 mile days. But there was some bad weather coming in, and we um, planned, I don't know, 8 or 10 miles. We're going to stop and camp. But the kids, we got to the point, I was like, do you want to um, camp now? The weather might come in, we'll finish tomorrow. Or do you want to keep going on and then we'll go ahead and get Thai food and donuts and sleep in our bed tonight? And they were like, let's keep hiking. So, so on the third day, we did like a 16-mile day, which was a long day for the children, but they were cool with it. And it was a something I was able to do because I had a healthier back than I used to. Uh,
Wow. So you attribute the healing of your back to sitting on the yoga ball and just generally not sitting in chairs very much.
Yes, but as I've learned about more about nutrition, I understand certain foods contribute more to inflammation, and certain foods contribute less, or
Right,
maybe even help remove it. And it
right,
seems to be that things like eggs and cheese and dairy are more likely to contribute to inflammation. So I also
right,
believe I have eat a lower inflammation diet as I move not only to vegan and whole foods, but to reduce the processed foods as
right.
well.
Well, I wanted to get to that. At what point, in addition to the sitting on the ball, did you start eating a vegan diet, and how did that relate to your back pain being reduced?
Yeah. Um, it, so
When
I'd
did
already
you go
gotten to I
vegan, Mark?
yeah I I had stopped using dairy milk at home and using some other vegan like substitute products, but definitely like I was eating baked goods and uh, whatever they had in them, wasn't asking questions, and eating vegetarian when I went out because it was just simpler. But uh, the more I learned a lot again through the podcast was like, okay, there's a climate change reason, there's ethical reasons, there's health reasons, and a big thing for me was it can be a win-win for performance that some of the best endurance athletes are performing well, are performing better on a vegan diet. And I was like, for all these reasons, I gotta just do this. And it's gonna be, I thought it's gonna be harder. I'm gonna end up cooking more of my own food at home because my family's vegetarian, not vegan. And so I'm gonna have to like deal with things at work and restaurants that's not gonna be completely comfortable. But I think there's a lot going on in the world that I feel like I don't have control over, the climate change and something I want to do about. So I felt like, this is something I can do on a daily basis that contributes to what feels like an ethical um, outcome, less harm, better for the planet, and potentially better for my health. So I thought, let's run this experiment of one. Let's try it um, and
So
see if it
how many
works.
years ago was this that you went vegan?
Some people have a date for that, but for me, it was just like the last tick. If there was a moment, I think it was probably the moment where I told my wife, like, look, I'm just going to be strict. I'm going to be strict at home. Today's the day. This is the moment. And I didn't put a date on the calendar or anything, but I'm going to say it was around 5 years ago or so. And
Mhm.
um, I assumed I was prepared to do whatever I needed to do to eat more strictly at home, but she's been supportive and meals now are like vegan, vegetarian optional. They're either vegan or they have cheese or whatever on the side. Um,
So in the last 5 years, you've gone vegan, and how did that affect your back?
oh, something like that recovers super quickly, but it's completely uh, recovered now. Now, people ask me to help them move. Um, I can run as long as I want. And I've got other, it's not a concern anymore.
So,
Um,
and then during these last 5 years, you've become, kind of a maniac runner. Tell us about some of the long endurance runs you've done.
yeah. So I'm a different type of runner in the sense that my favorite runs are not races. I like to do long runs by myself. When I say long, I'm saying marathon distance or longer. Um, for example, in 2020, I wanted to kick off the year with some quiet reflection on New Year's Day. I thought, let's just spend the day in reflection, thinking about things. So I planned a 31-mile run to just go out and reflect. And I thought, I'm willing to go and do this if it's 18 degrees or warmer, right?
Uh-huh.
But so I picked out my outfit and clothing for that. But thanks to climate change, it was low of 28 degrees that day. Um, and I went out and I did it. I picked some tough trails, some scenic views, saw a sunrise. It was a good day. I didn't know what 2020 had in store though, in terms of the whole world going off the rails then. Um, but it went well enough that I signed up for a 50-kilometer, 30, it was 31-mile trail race in mid-March and started training seriously for that. But that is, um, the world went off the rails then, and that race was canceled.
Oh.
But since I had trained for it, I decided I wanted to do something anyway. So I decided to run to another town, um, uh, yeah, Nashville, Indiana, and about 20 miles, eat lunch, and run back. And that's 40 miles, not 31, but I thought, it's an easier course, right? It's flatter, there's more road, less trails, less elevation. So
So how did you
it's
do on
about the
the
same
40
amount of
mile
effort.
run?
What's that?
How did you do on the 40-mile run?
Uh, Good. So it definitely helped to take a break in the middle.
Yeah.
Um, and
And your wife just asked you in the morning, will you be home for dinner? And that's it.
yeah, that's pretty much, yeah, she's happy. Yeah, like, that's about her only question usually. Yeah, so I ate Mexican food, which is maybe not everyone's choice to eat in the middle of a 40-mile run, but
I
it's not a big town.
I
And
don't think Rich Roll ever recommended eating Mexican food in the middle of a 40-mile run.
no, it's like a thing college students would challenge each other to do. In fact,
Yeah.
people at my college did do that. The challenge was to run across town to the Mexican restaurant, eat, and see if you could still run back. So I'm careful about what I order. I think I got the veggie fajitas with less oil,
Well, if you
and then
order the wrong thing, you'll actually run back faster.
yeah, yeah. So it was hard on the way back and hard leaving the restaurant, but I made it home and had a good time. I call that the Nashville lunch run, and I think I've done it. I did it like 3 times.
Oh,
Um,
this is becoming a tradition now.
well, I have what I call the annual engine check, where it's around my birthday in the spring. I just go out and check the engine, and with a good long run like that. Um, but a couple of years ago, I was like, I've done that lunch run 3 times, and I'm afraid if I do it again, it's just not going to be as fun, or I'm going to try and like race my old time, and I just want to go out there and focus on like being out there all day. So I looked around for other towns I could run to get something to eat, but there's not a ton of ones that are a good distance. But I did find Martinsville, which instead of being a 40-mile round trip would be a 50-mile round trip. And I'd never run more than the 40-mile distance, but I thought, oh, let's try that. I'll
What's an
just run
extra 10 miles?
a
Big
20.
deal,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, right. What's an extra 10 miles? So, the method for these, so the thing, if you sign up for a normal race, you get whatever weather they have on the race day. But when I'm doing these runs that are just for me, I declare what my perfect weather is, which for me is about 45 degrees and fairly a constant temperature all day, not too hot, not too cold. And then I take off work when the weather is good, and then I go have a run when the weather is perfect. Um, and then, yeah, I don't worry about running too fast. I just go out there to have a good time. But I don't know, maybe I got ahead of myself because I picked a day in mid-February. It just snowed, but the temperature had warmed up just enough. And I thought, well, the forecast looks right. I'm gonna go. Um, and I did go, but the other thing about my method, which is unusual perhaps, is that I hardly sometimes when on these runs, I don't leave the house carrying any water at all, or I carry like 500, like a half a liter. And so what I do is I take a water filter, a little flask, has a
Yeah.
small water filter in it, and I plan my routes along where I can filter water along the way. So there's a lake or a stream or something.
You're kidding me. You filter your own water during your runs?
Yeah, and I'll stop. I've timed it. I can stop for about 30 seconds, long enough to scoop the little flask through the water, and then while I'm running, I'm holding like one flask above the other and squeezing, and so it's filtering the water like while I'm in motion. But water weighs like 8 pounds per gallon. It's sort of
Uh-huh.
heavy. So this is just a way to be lightweight, but it also puts you more in tune with your environment. There's no other animal out there that's carrying a water bottle around. They're just relying on what's in the environment. So it helps me tune in to the season, to the water, uh, so I appreciate that part of it too.
Well, it's a good thing you don't live on the coast or you'd have to carry a desalination plant on your back. Uh,
Yeah. So this time in February, there was water in the streams because it had recently snowed and was starting to melt a little bit. But uh, I was going through some unknown territory where I didn't know all the little creeks and so forth. But so I was looking at the things I could find on the map, which were lakes. But as I arrived at the lakes, they were frozen, which presented a challenge. But I only needed like a half a liter of water, and I did find a place around the edge that was not frozen where I could get um, some water. But my other miscalculation was that I was go ahead.
well, if you were to take a solar powered hair dryer, you could
Oh,
then melt the lake and get some fresh water that way, which you could then purify.
that was
That's what I do.
that was yeah. So I do I have I carry everything in my running shorts, so I have limited room to carry hair dryers.
So you're
Uh,
running in your shorts in 45 degrees.
yeah, running in shorts. I don't, other people use a what they call a running vest. It's kind of like a very small backpack. I don't even have that. I just have running shorts plus what's called a hydration belt, kind of a special belt with a lot of pockets in it. And that's all I've got for like the whole 11 hours of running. Yeah. So I was running north and it had snowed more, which hadn't occurred, like it is colder in the north. So when I got to these trails in the Morgan Monroe Forest, I found that they had 4 inches of snow on them, which the only footprints in them were like raccoons and coyotes and deer. And so I was running for a while through like deep, you know, substantial fresh snow. But I eventually popped out by a gun range onto a road again, navigating using like a little 1 inch screen on my watch because I've never been on these trails before. I only found them on a map.
Do you
Um,
find that when you run by gun ranges, you run faster?
yes,
Yeah.
yes. There's a sign there that says "Stay on the trail, you might die," and I did heed that warning
Okay.
and stayed on the trail. They have since closed that section of trail because some people did not stay on the on the trail. I didn't hear that they got shot, but
Hmm.
the gun people who own the gun range were not happy to see the hikers wandering around in the wrong area. Yeah, so so I did that, and they just were building an interstate, and I was able to. They hadn't put up the fences that year, I guess, and this time I tried Chinese because it was close to the route. Um, so I crossed the interstate and had Chinese, but again was very careful what I ordered. That
Hmm.
year it was the like kind of a just veggies and tofu and a white sauce.
Right.
And I'm happy to report that I ran back faster after eating Chinese than I ran there. It did settle well. So
Now you recently ran in a competitive race, didn't you, with about 50 runners?
yeah, so I did the Dances with Dirt trail marathon here just last weekend, and I actually did place second overall. Um,
Second out of 50 runners?
it might have been even less than 50. I have to go
Okay.
check. There, so
And
there,
and how many were 48 years old or thereabout like
uh,
yourself?
these distances are popular for this age group, but in my age group, there were five-ish in that age group.
If you want to optimize your health by following a plant based, low fat diet, look into the education, events, recipes, exercise, fun, and more provided by the Plant Based Nutrition Support Group at pbnsg.org.
Okay, and how many were younger? Everyone
Oh,
else?
there's definitely more younger people. I'm
A,
sorry, I
a
don't have
lot, a
those
lot of
stats,
runners
but
in their 20s and 30s.
I was definitely beating some younger people. Yeah,
So,
yeah.
well, you came in second.
Second overall, and it wasn't my fastest time, and it wasn't a super fast race, but it still feels pretty good to finish second overall, even in a
Yeah,
slower race. So I'll take it.
ahead of a lot of runners in their 20s and 30s, right?
Yeah, I'll say when I go to these events and talk to the people in the front, there seems to be a disproportionate amount of vegetarians and vegans at the front of the pack. Uh,
Yeah.
When people perform well in running, one of the questions I like to ask is, what do you eat? I just ask neutrally, but a lot of times they are eating better, and that's part of why they're performing better.
All right. So no back pain anymore?
No, no back pain anymore. And
And the the doctors, or at least the chiropractor, I assume you also went to conventional doctors at the time? No?
yeah, no, I don't know that they were much use. No, I didn't
My
even.
question is, the doctors and the chiropractor, they said you were just going to have to live with this, right?
Oh, the chiropractor definitely did.
And
Yeah.
what about any other conventional doctors?
Yeah, and I didn't think they had much to offer me.
Yeah.
Um,
Did
yeah,
anyone suggest surgery?
no,
No.
uh, yeah. So I'm
Just
glad I didn't go that
painkillers.
route. Yeah, I mean, while I was recovering, I did a certain amount of the Advil and stuff. Um,
Hmm.
but no, I tried to not do too much of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tried acupuncture and yoga, and everything helped some, but I eventually, you wrote the book Own Your Health, and that was part of my attitude is like, I'm number one here. I'm in the driver's seat to take care of this. I read a book called by John Sarno, which I was going to look up the title before this, but his book was about the mind-body connection between
Hmm.
back pain, um, and your brain. Apparently, some of the certain conditions happen more to type A people where they just hold themselves tight, like a TMJ for jaw pain. It's not something I had, but apparently.
Hmm.
Um, so that sciatica that struck at a stressful time of my life as well, and I did make that connection. So one of the deals I made with myself was if I feel like I'm getting a little off course, a little into pain, a little out of sync, I'm going to correct the course sooner. I'm not going to say that's okay. And uh, so I have become a better like self-advocate for self-care, and I think that's partly what my regular running habit is now. It's about staying close to balance and just instead of saying, work is my priority, I'm gonna really make a killing, right? Throw yourself at it until you just at the limit of what you can stand, and then you'll recover later. I don't do that anymore. Uh,
Well, a lot
yeah.
of people make deals with themselves, especially around New Year's Eve, and they make New Year's resolutions, and they don't keep their deals. But it seems to me that there's something about your personality that when you make a deal with yourself, you're ready to hire lawyers to hold yourself to it.
Yeah, I also, like I said, I've been a slow change person. Of course, once I got here, I would love to see other people change quickly and receive some of the benefits that I perceive I've gotten. But I do have to remind myself that I got here very, very slowly. It didn't stop with going vegan, though, in terms of my food evolving. I met this group in town, which was a whole foods, plant-based potluck group, um, and uh, we've that group has had some more speakers, and I've met more people and ran into more books. And then I was learning like, oh, okay, there's vegan, but there's also like this healthier vegan, and like why are some people cutting out oil? What's the focus on whole plants? What's the importance of fiber? So I've continued to evolve and learn and read more and tweak my diet more to not only be vegan, but to try to be a healthier version of that. And I'm continuing on that path still today.
All right, so let's see what we've learned here. If one has terrible sciatica pain, one possible solution, well, there's a group of possible solutions. You can sit on a yoga ball. You could get a standing desk.
Standing desk, yeah.
You can run 25 miles to a Mexican restaurant and then run back. You could also try that with a Chinese restaurant, apparently. Which do you think works better, the Mexican or the Chinese, Mark?
I'm gonna go for the Chinese.
Chinese with tofu in
Yeah.
a light white sauce. Make sure it's vegan. Um, Also, you have to focus on the mind-body connection. And when you focus on the mind-body connection, how do you do that, Mark?
I think you just sort of reflect like, you sit with your body. Do I feel stress? How do I feel now? And then you like do an inventory and you just kind of be honest with yourself. One way we have stress is that we don't feel like we can do anything about it. So there's no external thing we can do about the stress. And so we hold it inside, like a deadline at work where it's just, you can't stop it, right? It's just happening. And so that was the sort of thing where I internalized that. Um, but then I did not listen to the signals that I
Mhm.
needed some course correction.
Okay. And then the other thing you have to do to overcome the sciatica pain is to go vegan and on a healthy whole foods vegan diet, preferably without oil. What about salt and sugar? Do you try to avoid those as well?
Somewhat, yeah. Now I'm in a house with two teenagers and they love the kinds of ready-made foods that I loved when I was a kid. It's a
Hmm.
little healthier now than it used to be, but on my own, I would play the not in the house, not in the mouth game. That would be my way to manage the diet as if I lived on my own. But when I go to the kitchen, there's often chips, vegan ice cream, and other temptations in my house. Um, so I
Well, you
partake
have you
in some
have
of
to
these.
you have to use the mind-body connection to avoid eating those things.
Yeah, I do try to deploy the willpower
Yeah.
as when I can, but
See, I
it
could do
is a
that pretty
challenge.
easily, but I can't do the 40-mile run.
Yeah,
What I have done, I don't like to brag, but there have been times when I have driven 20 miles
okay.
to a restaurant, eaten, and driven back.
Yeah, there's some good restaurants 20 miles away.
Mhm.
Uh, yeah.
Now, you have teenagers. Tell us about parenting as a vegan.
Yeah, so um, when people knew us as young parents, they would have identified us as a biking family. We biked everywhere, and as I mentioned, I think when the kids were 8 and 11, we did this hike. Before that, when they were just turned 5 and 8, we did a week-long bike tour where I had a cargo bike with like 30 pounds of gear, and then a 30-pound child as also being carried. So we rode with them about 7 days. I think that like 270 miles. It was around southern Indiana. So they've been an active uh, family. When my so during that 2020 season where I kicked it off with a 50K, because of the pandemic, a lot of people did a lot of running that year, and I ended up doing 14 runs that were 26 miles or longer. I did a series of, yeah,
14 runs, 26 miles or longer
yeah.
in
This is a
in how
story
much
that
time?
what's that?
In how much time?
Oh, throughout the year. But I will
One
say
year.
in the spring when the weather was good and nothing else was going on,
Yeah.
I ran 5 marathon distance runs in 5 weeks. And I did not plan that. It was just that I found that by Tuesday or Wednesday, I felt recovered. And I was pretty amazed by that. And then I would plan my next adventure and I'd plan another one because there's the pandemic. There's not everything else is closed. And I was wondering aloud, like, how am I able to recover from a 26-mile run enough to do another one? And then I was getting faster as I went. The further ones were faster than the slower ones. And I was like, what is going on here? Um, and I thought that was a fluke. That'll never happen again. But then in the fall, I did six uh, marathon distance runs in 6 weeks, including a 50K race in the middle, which I placed well at. And I was like, what's going on? And I have to think the diet plays a part of that. And my belief is that there's less inflammation in my diet, and that allows me to recover faster and do some of this more adventures. Um,
It's clearly the diet
well, it could be.
because
But yeah, so that's like me for fun now. This spring I'm older, right? So I should get slower and be doing less, but the weather was good. So I this spring I did 4 marathon distance runs in 5 weeks. One week I was, I don't know, busy, it didn't work out. But the weather, it was just the season when the weather was perfect. So that's my thing. When the weather's great, I go out and do long runs, and they all just happen to, it all happens in like one season. So they're kind of back to back. But each time I'm not planning out a sequence. I'm just like, do I feel good? Can I go? Let's go. And I'm able to recover in like 3 or 4 days and go again. Now, I'm not putting in like the absolute all out, Boston Marathon race effort for these, but I honestly still don't know other people around here who are running that distance at all and recovering and doing another one. So um, yeah, I'm definitely giving the diet for credit, some credit for that.
and how about biking? Do you go on extremely long endurance bike rides?
Yeah, I used to do more bike touring. One of the last, when my daughter was 11, I had my wife drop us off in Louisville on a tandem, with a tandem. We were biking back to uh, Bloomington. There'd been some climate change induced flooding then. So the first day went fine. The second day we ran into some flooded rivers we couldn't get around and had to get picked up. But
Wow.
so I
Not by a
wanted,
helicopter, I hope.
yeah, no, we had a special car. We had to make sure we could fit the tandem on the back of the car. But
Wow.
one thing that happened in 2020 was my kids saw me doing this, and this is just dad being dad.
Hmm.
And the beautiful thing about parenting is that for a while, whatever you do, your kids will think is normal. You get to create the normal. So the normal
Hmm.
thing was dad went out for running for, 26 miles every weekend.
Well, you really fooled them about what's normal.
So I think in 2021, my son wants to start running with me, and he sort of normalized what I'm doing. So I think one day I knew he'd done this 16-mile hike previously. I was like, hey, do you want to go out on an 8-mile run with me? And I was on a trail, and I thought, look, if you're not in great shape now, but if it doesn't work out, we'll just hike. I know you can hike that far. It'll be fine. Um, so he did that, and it wasn't super fast, but he did like an 8-mile run with me. And he sort of had my attitude when he got home. He was like, well, that wasn't as fast as I want. I want to go out, and pretty soon he was like, I want to go back and do it again, but a little faster. So we did that a couple times. And pretty soon I was like, do you want to sign up for a race? Because you can clearly run 8 miles. Um,
Now, what about the diet and parenting? What do you say to your kids about your vegan diet? Do you recommend it to them? What's their diet like?
yeah, that's a good question. So we don't have rules about what they eat or don't eat. We have the food we have in the house and then we don't have in the house. And they have been vegetarian by choice since birth. We don't have rules
That
of
was
they
unusual for them at birth to make that choice. How did they express that?
well, as soon as they were able to make choices for themselves, we've never said, you have to eat this particular way.
Okay.
But like if they go to a party or a restaurant, whatever, they can get what they want. But they're not interested in that. I was a little concerned for them once we went to this, after we rode our bikes like 270 miles, we got to Holiday World, which is a theme park, and it was hot that day, and we were gonna use all the endurance we built up biking to run around the theme park all day and get the maximal number of rides in, but it was gonna be hot, and I was worried they weren't gonna get enough to drink, but they had these soda fountain stations all through the park that had like let's say, Pepsi products, like every 50 feet. And I was like, oh boy, here we go. They're all gonna, like, this isn't gonna work out. But the problem was not what I thought, not that they got addicted to soda that day. It's that they didn't want that junk. They I was like, look, just have their crappy lemonade, right? But they were like, oh, that's too sweet. And I was
Uh-huh.
like, you need some electrolytes. You're gonna out in the sun all day. They just wanted to drink the water.
That's good.
Um,
So after your kids at birth made the decision to go vegetarian, um, then as they got older, did they discuss why they're vegetarian and flirt with going vegan and talk to you about why you're vegan? And does this
yeah,
become something that they discuss and think about?
like I think the thought of meat is gross to them. They also, I think it is just super normal in our house. So um, we talk about, some factory farming and some of the things, and I think for all the reasons they're not interested in that. But in terms of going from vegetarian to vegan, um, I mentioned some of the reasons, but ultimately I want them to uh, make decisions on their own, so I'm not forcing anything on them. I think, they'll be their own people. But the reality is, the menu and the food we're having in our house has dramatically shifted. Um, my daughter, one of the weird swaps we made, I think we have less cheese and more purple cabbage. My daughter likes purple cabbage. It's something we put on like tacos, for example. Um, and yeah,
I have a theory that purple foods are the healthiest foods and the most delicious foods. You got purple cabbage, you got purple grapes, purple sweet potatoes,
they're
Japanese
great.
eggplant.
I don't think
All
we used
my
to,
favorite foods are purple.
I don't think we used to stock purple cabbage in our house at all, but now it's like a problem if it's not in the fridge. I had purple cabbage on beans and rice yesterday. It's just like colorful and crispy.
Hmm.
It's not at all like a one-to-one substitute for cheese, like a fake, like these oil-based cheeses. But it's something that we include a lot. So yeah, so what the kids are actually eating is definitely um, vegan a lot of the time.
Now, have your kids talk to you? It sounds like they have been very decisively vegetarian since birth, but have they talked to you about the peer pressure, the other kids at school, they're going out for cheeseburgers, they're drinking Pepsi, and or there are pizza parties with dairy pizza. Have they talked to you about uh, the pressures they may be under as teenagers?
Today, being vegetarian is not much of a social issue. Any pizza party will have a cheese pizza or they won't mind getting one. I think being vegan and today for a kid would definitely put them in another category of being more socially isolated. And
Uh-huh.
that could be one reason that they make the choices that they do.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think for a while, or maybe still currently, my daughter has some lactose intolerance. So
Good for
um,
her.
for her, yeah, so like a cheesy pizza
Yeah.
wouldn't wouldn't necessarily work for her either. But she still likes the some of those flavors, so she still tries to have some in smaller doses. But
I think
yeah,
probably having lactose intolerance is a good thing.
yeah, I'm kind of that mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Now, when you cook, you like to use the Instant Pot, is that right?
Oh yes. Yeah.
Tell us about your Instant Pot use. Do you carry an Instant Pot for like on your 50-mile runs? Have you ever done that? Stop after 25 miles, cook something in the Instant Pot, and bring home leftovers.
You're pretty close to the truth there, Glenn.
You're kidding me.
Well, we will take Instant Pots on car trips because,
Okay.
they didn't stock one at the hotel.
Okay.
And you might see me show up at a potluck on a cargo bike with an Instant Pot hung off of each side of the back of the bike. That's pretty typical for how I roll into a potluck.
Wow.
Um,
You
I
know, the
yeah.
term potluck isn't supposed to mean instant potluck. You,
Ah,
you've misunderstood.
yeah.
So you bring an instant pot to a potluck.
Unless I'm having a potluck at my house. I had a potluck called the Plants Under Pressure potluck because I just thought there weren't enough potlucks dedicated specifically to cooking vegetarian, vegan food and instant pots. So I made my own.
All right. Well,
And it was,
Instant Pot is not funding this podcast, but go ahead. Tell us what you love about the Instant Pot.
oh my gosh. So as a man in the kitchen, it was my gateway appliance to 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 just cooking everything. So I start the day with making oatmeal in Instant Pot. Um,
How
you
long
can
does
put
that take? I've never done
two
that.
minutes at pressure. I love adding some apples, which turn to almost applesauce with some walnuts. Add some cinnamon. Um, I'll put in a little turmeric in there, maybe some ginger, maybe some raisins or nuts. Um, and that's an awesome way to start the day. I love an Instant Pot at work or work from home because I can put on some brown rice, go to work, come upstairs or whatever, wherever the kitchen is, and then I've got some brown rice waiting for me at lunch. Um, Something else we have in stock, it's at our house like all the time, is I created a Chipotle black bean recipe and
Hmm?
we make it in large batches, uh, and that lasts a week or two. It's a bulk recipe, and then I keep it in the fridge. So when I come upstairs to have my lunch, we're having the brown rice that I made in the Instant Pot. I'm usually taking some of these Chipotle black beans, which is what I had for lunch yesterday, and then dump it on the brown rice, and then I add some whatever veggies. Sometimes I even add fruit or mango, whatever I have in stock, and that's a typical lunch for me. We use the Instant Pots at dinner for green beans. They're great for side dishes. The family likes white rice as well. We use it for that. So it's not uncommon. We're using our Instant Pot 2 or 3 times a day. I now own 4 of them.
You own
Um,
4 Instant Pots?
yeah. Uh,
Why do you need four?
so I have the one that gets the most use is the 3 quart. That's for individuals, side dishes. The 6 quart for a long time was a standard size. Um, and then we have the 8 quart, which is like for double batches. And the reason we have multiples is that um, we'll often have, not often, but sometimes using 2 or even 3 at a time. You could use you may have a rice in one and a side dish in another. They replace multiple appliances. So we got rid of 2 or 3 slow cookers, and then one or two rice cookers as well. So instead of having these single-purpose appliances, a pressure cooker, a rice cooker, and uh, yeah, a slow cooker, we have 3, or in this case 4, that we can use for multiple different purposes. Yeah,
Well, I will have to contact Instant Pot and see if they're willing to sponsor this podcast.
yeah. My favorite Instant Pot cookbook has been The New Fast Food by Jill Nusenow. And it is
Okay.
a whole foods plant-based cookbook that focuses particularly on easy, fast recipes in the Instant Pot. And I've cooked a number out of there. We now use it so much for so many things that a lot of the times we're using it, it's not for recipes anymore, just for things we've remembered. But in the winter, I love it for all kinds of soups and stews. Uh, so, uh,
Now,
and
when you don't have your yoga ball, have you tried sitting on the Instant Pot?
um, no, it is heavy enough. It has a handle, kind of like a kettlebell. You can do
Yeah.
some Instant Pot lifts.
Yeah.
And you can fill it with a different amount of water to create different
Yeah.
weights and then kind of like use it more like a barbell.
That's what I'm suggesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a good, yeah. The lid does not make a good frisbee. Would not suggest that, but
Okay. Do you work out in a gym? Do you do weights?
No, I've been
No.
trying to do some push-ups at home, but trying probably is the key word there. Uh, no, my daughter has told me to stretch more, but I tell her that today's run stretches out yesterday's run, and that's pretty much my method. Uh, yeah.
Do you stretch before you run?
Oh, maybe 5 or 10 seconds.
Uh-huh.
But I just try to run this first mile slower and not just be hot out of the gate. Just warm up a little bit while I run.
Yeah.
But,
Now, what is it about running that you enjoy so much? Do you get into a state of meditation when you're doing a 50-mile run and you're on mile 17? What are you thinking?
oh, yeah. So my day job is computer work, and it's all very abstract and in my head and in the computer. So being outside and like moving is a great antidote to the absolute opposite of my daily job. So I do just try to just tune in and be present for that. Uh, it can be that, once I get to mile 4 or 5 or 6, I'm like, okay, let's put on a podcast and tune out a little bit. But mostly I'm trying to just tune in and be there. If I do listen to something, it's usually a podcast and usually only in just one ear. I always like to hear what's going on around me.
Well,
Um,
what you can do in the near future is you could go on a long run while listening to this podcast, and you'll be listening to yourself talking about running while running.
wow,
You could write
that's
a book
that's
about that.
that's meta. I
Yeah.
might yeah.
I
Sound
wonder if you would run even better while listening to yourself talking about what you're thinking about while you're running.
It might be difficult to keep my balance if I was doing that, but
Yeah.
it's definitely a thought to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so do you, as you're running, do you ever come up with great ideas for your work or for other aspects of your life that, come up with eureka insights as you're on mile 23?
Yeah, sometimes I do. I've started pulling out my phone and taking notes while I remember them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. I wrote down a note just yesterday. Um,
Were you running yesterday?
I, every day, most every day. Yeah.
So how
It
far
was
did you run yesterday?
oh gosh. Yeah. Well, I ran this morning too.
You
Um,
ran this morning already. We're recording this in the morning. You already
yeah.
ran today?
Yeah, I've been trying to run about an hour before breakfast lately. But yeah, I only got in a couple miles this morning. Yesterday it was five or
So
six.
this is a slow day for you when you get in 2 miles.
Yeah, it's kind of like a rest day, kind
Yeah.
of
See, for me, a 2 mile run would be a big deal.
yeah. Well, hey, yeah. Um,
So you take notes as you run?
I've been starting to jot down ideas. Yeah. Um, I was thinking about I looked into natural vision healing, right? Um, it
Natural vision healing.
I'm not sure if it's works or
Now,
not,
for those
really.
listening to the podcast rather than watching on YouTube, Mark is wearing glasses. Are
Yeah.
you trying to not need glasses?
Well, so there's things you can control and that you can't control, but
Right,
part of what you can control is your eyes have muscles. And those
right.
muscles, if you just stare straight ahead all the time, they're not really getting used, right? So some of the what can be done, part of what you can control is just making sure you take breaks to look far as well as near and, look around at your different range of motion and what you can do with your eyes. Uh, in the end, whether it can be effective, I will not form a strong opinion about that. But uh, I something stuck in my head from a page I wrote. It was about practicing at the edge of blur. Like that was where you wanted to work on that, right? And I was thinking, yeah, that's sort of how my running has been. It's that I didn't go from 0 to 50 miles, but I was always just at the edge of blur. Kind of, it's a way to describe incrementalism. Um, I don't push myself to the point of pain and suffering, but I do push myself a little bit. And that little bit and a little bit has added up over time. So the note I wrote down was like, progress happens at the edge of blur. If you do too much, like you have to take a huge break, you get injured. But if you're just at the edge of the difficulty, that's hard, but you can do it. That's where progress happens. Um,
All right. So you're trying to heal your eyes with this method?
not seriously, but
Okay.
it you know how your brain latches onto something you haven't really thought about in a long time, like you dream of someone that you haven't seen in years, and you're like, why did I dream of that? So I don't know why that phrase popped into my head while I was running, but that's why I stopped and wrote it down. But that's sort of a metaphor for my food change as well, is that there wasn't a huge change for me. I know some people can just go cold turkey and make a big change, but that's how my food change happened. It was like progress happened at the edge of blur, just where things started to get difficult. That's where I made change. In my house, we changed one ingredient at a time, one recipe at a time. So my wife liked her milk creamer, and that was one of the things she was having. But one day she tried one brand of non-dairy creamer. It might have been a soy creamer. She was like, "That's it. That's great. I'm switching." Um, and that ingredient was swapped on that day. Um, so yeah, it's, um, for some people, that's just a better approach, just small steps.
All right. Well, there is a new philosophy out there. It's called progress at the edge of blur, and I think it's a good philosophy. Uh, I can see a lot of progress being made just as people hit their limits and concentrate on understanding those limits and working through them.
Yeah, and for those of us who've already are further along our food journey, I think it's also having the grace to understand that people who are want to head this way maybe um, may also need to take smaller steps, and it can take a while.
Yeah. All right. Well, Mark, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. And I know you have a day of work and probably a few more runs ahead of you today. So we'll talk soon. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for
And
having me
everyone
on,
out,
Glenn.
what's that?
Thank you for having me.
Sure thing. Everybody out there, please subscribe and we'll see you soon. This has been the Glenn Mercer Show, where everyone listening turns vegan, regains their health, and annoys their friends and relatives. Find us on YouTube at The Glenn Mercer Show and across all your major podcast platforms. Don't forget to subscribe.